Bienvenidos al Medical Spanish Podcast. Soy la doctora Molly Martin. Through this podcast, we provide interactive audio lessons for learning practical Spanish for healthcare and elsewhere. The level of this lesson is intermediate, and timestamps are provided in the show notes. Hola a todos. While working on our latest series covering Spanish for orthopedic injuries, I noticed how the verb to say, I injured my knee, is pronominal or reflexive, me lesioné la rodilla, whereas the verb to say, I bent my knee, doblé la rodilla, is non-pronominal. So why is that? Well, in this lesson, I hope to answer that question and more. It's a tricky subject, so I'll try to make it clear using lots of examples. Y antes de empezar, quiero agradecer a mi profesora de México, Gloria Becerril, que me ayudó con el español de esta lección. If you too would like to take classes with Gloria, there's a link in the show notes. ¿Listos? Empecemos. Let's start with some verbs in their pronominal or reflexive form. We use the pronominal form of the verb to express that an action involving our body was unintentional or accidental. For example, how would you say, I hit my head?
Me golpeé la cabeza.
How about, I broke my arm?
Me rompí el brazo.
Or,
Me quebré el brazo.
and in medical terms,
Me fracturé el brazo.
how about, I twisted my ankle?
Me torcí el tobillo.
Finally, using the verb estirar, how would you say, I pulled a muscle in my back?
Me estiré un músculo en la espalda.
So in all of these examples, we use the pronominal or reflexive form of the verb to clarify that these were accidental or unintentional events. So if you were to say, golpeé la cabeza or rompí el brazo, people may look at you funny, because using the non-pronominal form of these verbs implies that the action was intentional. Now let's use the pronominal form of the verb to express reflexive actions, intentional actions we perform on our bodies. How would you say, I wash my hands?
Me lavo las manos.
I touch my nose.
Me toco la nariz.
I brush my teeth.
Me cepillo los dientes.
I cut my hair.
Me corto el pelo.
Which can also translate as, I get my hair cut.
Me corto el pelo.
These are all deliberate actions performed on oneself. For instance, me lavo las manos, we're performing the action of washing on our own hands. Therefore, it's considered a reflexive action, and we use the pronominal form of the verb. Now let's go back to the example, I pulled a muscle in my back. How did Gloria say that using the verb estirar?
Me estiré un músculo en la espalda.
So here, we're not using our hand to intentionally stretch a muscle in our back, so it's not a reflexive action. Rather, we're using the pronominal form of the verb here to convey that it was an unintentional action we did to our body. Me estiré un músculo en la espalda. I pulled a muscle in my back. And in the next member lesson, we'll learn another way to say this. Now let's practice using the non-pronominal form of the verb to express deliberate actions involving a part of the body. Using the usted command, how would you say, stretch your arms?
Estire los brazos.
So this is a deliberate action where we're moving a part of our body. And unlike the prior examples, we're not performing an action on our arms, we're performing an action with our arms. So it's a deliberate action we're doing with our arms, and it's not considered reflexive. Therefore, we use the non-pronominal form of the verb. Estire los brazos. Now listen to an excerpt from the last member lesson where we review common commands during a knee exam. Raise your leg with the knee extended.
Levante la pierna con la rodilla extendida.
Or,
Suba la pierna con la rodilla extendida.
so when you want to express that a limb should be straight, you use the adjective extendido or extendida.
Suba la pierna con la rodilla extendida.
Now bend your knee.
Ahora doble la rodilla.
Using intentar, interpreta, try to relax your muscles.
Intente relajar los músculos.
And of course, you could also use tratar de and say, trate de relajar los músculos. Now, how would you say to the patient, relax?
Relájese.
So in the previous example, we were asking the patient to intentionally relax a part of their body. So we use the non-pronominal form of the verb, relaje los músculos. In the second example, we are simply asking someone to relax their whole being without referring to any part of the body. Thus, it becomes a reflexive action. It's like saying, relax yourself, and we use the pronominal form of the verb.
Relájese.
Let's compare the pronominal and non-pronominal form of the verb mover. How would you say to a friend, move your hips?
Mueve las caderas.
Here, Gloria prefers using the singular noun la cadera, so that move your hips would be
Mueve la cadera.
And how would you tell your friend, move over?
Muévete.
So when we want them to move their whole self, it becomes reflexive, and we use the pronominal form of the verb, muévete. When we want them to just move a certain part of their body, we use the non-pronominal form of the verb, mueve la cadera. Speaking to a patient, how would you say, move forward?
Muévase hacia adelante.
To conclude, let's practice using the pronominal verbs ponerse y hacerse to express moving the whole body. Using hacerse, how would you say to your friend, get over here?
Hazte para acá.
Now, using hacerse again and addressing a patient as you said, how would you say, come over here?
Hágase para acá.
How would you tell your patient, go over there?
Hágase para allá.
So when expressing movement, we use acá rather than aquí and allá rather than allí.
Hágase para acá, hágase para allá.
And now we're going to practice a colloquial phrase using hacerse that you would only use with a good friend, someone you're comfortable with. Using hacerse, how would you say, get out of the way?
Hazte.
Yep, you heard that right. It's simply the to command with the reflexive verb hacerse. Get out of the way.
Hazte.
Now let's practice using the verb ponerse to address a patient lying in bed or lying on an exam table. Roll onto your side.
Póngase de lado.
Lay on your back.
Póngase boca arriba.
Lay on your stomach.
Póngase boca abajo.
Bien hecho. I hope you found this lesson useful. Espero que te haya resultado útil esta lección. And in the show notes, I provided links to multiple related lessons covering verbs with the body and verbs of motion. If you're not a member yet and you'd like to learn more with us, support the podcast and become a member at docmolly.com. Hasta pronto! This is a production of docmolly.com, where we learn practical Spanish for healthcare and elsewhere.